You're listening to Stand Tall and Own It, the podcast for high-performing female leaders who are ready to make an impact by discovering the safety that comes from understanding their own value and exercising their own authority. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and I'm here to tell you it is time to just truly be you, my strong friend. It's time to stand tall and own it. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Stand Tall and Own It. I am your host, Andrea Johnson. I am the Intentional Optimist, and today we are going to talk just a little bit deeper and a little bit more personally about Clifton Strengthsfinder. If you have been paying attention through the last few episodes, I have spoken with some guests, and I am in the middle, right smack in the middle of a series talking about the tools that I've used and that I have in my tool belt that have given me insight and understanding and have built a foundation for me to kind of weather some storms and walk through some things and make some decisions or figure out how to better myself or fit into teams. And working through this series, I wanted to start with the one that I use the most with my clients, which is DISC, and then work through the tools that I have into the ones that are mostly used for my personal growth. And StrengthsFinder is the first tool that validated those innate talents that I have, allowing me to step fully into entrepreneurship, that's a word that's hard to say, and own the value that I bring to my clients. It is, as I expressed in my last episode with my former coach and StrengthsFinder, certified StrengthsFinder coach, Allegra Stein, it is the one tool that I feel like is a really nice balance between using in my business and using for me personally. When I introduced Allegra to you, she's a certified UMAP coach. She utilizes StrengthsFinder documentation and data in her work to help people transform big ideas into reality. And it was just really nice to have the renewed conversation with her because if you didn't notice, she was actually my podcast episode or podcast guest long ago. I want to say episode 50 or 100 or something like that. We'll link it in the show notes if you're interested in hearing about her and what she does. She is such a unique and interesting and different person. I walk away from conversations with her feeling light on my feet. But one of the things I shared with her is that the StrengthsFinder specifically gave me both internal and external validation, meaning it showed me the things that I was feeling and thinking inside, as well as the things that other people were seeing, that my behaviors and the things that I had. And that doesn't happen every day with an assessment. She was very careful to express, and I thought shared this, very gentle with how she applies the StrengthsFinder and how she applies the whole assessment idea. But the thing that I love about the StrengthsFinder is that it told me I was talented in something. And when I was young, I was kind of all about figuring out my talents, right? I prefer the things that I'm good at. I don't prefer doing things that are difficult for me. And I was very talented in the area of music. I sang, I played instruments. I enjoyed acting, all of those kinds of things. And those are seen as talents, but very few and far between are the people who look at our strengths or the things that maybe have gone, as she expressed, strengths that have gone too far and called those talents. And these are the things that we have developed over time, and it was really nice to be validated in what those are. So for me, I'm just going to share with you my top 5, because there's 34 of them, and my top 5 is Connectedness. The very first one is Connectedness, meaning I don't see coincidences. There's usually a reason behind something. There's like a thread that connects things together. And a lot of times I'll express to my husband, yeah, see, if you tap on this side of the spider web, that side of the spider web is going to bounce as well. There's always something connecting whatever, the thought, the idea, or the people or the relationships to someone or something else. My number 2 is strategic, meaning I can spot patterns and issues. I can create alternative ways to proceed. The way Allegra said, oh, I bet those connectedness and strategic work together to have you go bing, bing, bing for other people. I can just see the things dots that are out there, and you can just really connect those dots for them. And I can. I'm really good at seeing patterns. I shared with her how I see patterns throughout history. I see patterns in people's behaviors. I see patterns in relationships. I see patterns in our physical bodies, the way different pieces work together and different things that very little to me happens in a vacuum. And understanding all of those is where strategic comes into play. For me, number 3 is Relator. I enjoy close relationships, and I tend to go deep early. I can connect with people, even though Connectedness is a different one. The Relator one means that I can connect with people very quickly. I can kind of almost look into their eyes and just kind of get this, like there's a zing that happens, and I can connect with them and go deep. My number 4 is Activator, meaning I like to make things happen. I may be slow getting to a decision, but once I decide, look out, because it's just going to happen. And my best friend and podcast producer laughs whenever I say, I've kind of been thinking about this thing and I might do this, or I think maybe we'll go in this direction. What do you think about that? She's like, you've already decided. And the reality is I have. And so there are many times when I want to act toward things. I want to help people, other people around me accomplish things. And so I tend to feel impatient. This doesn't work well at home. This doesn't work well with my 15-year-old son, and it does not work well with my husband. So I have to be very careful. But my number 5, which has always been a little bit of a mystery to me, is the maximizer. And Allegra and I talked about this. It is an influencer strength. It focuses on the strengths that you see in a situation or a person and kind of I want to transform them into something that is superb. So going from good to great is kind of a maximizer thing. And I joke around with people that I like to take whatever you got and make it even better. My big takeaways from my conversation with Allegra, though, is that she said, Andrea, this podcast is your activator and maximizer strength showing up. And you know what? She's right. How many times do I share? If I learn something, I'm going to tell you, because as soon as I have the information, I'm going to share it with you. And I want to if I'm interviewing someone, I want to take their ideas and make them really big. I want you to understand them. I want to make them extremely clear. But another takeaway that I had was, just like when I help people understand their core values by saying, well, what are the things that anger you? That's probably a core value that's being stepped on or dishonored. She said a lot of times, just in a conversation with people, she can tell what their strengths are because it's the areas that they are the most self-critical in. Because she reminded me that strengths a lot of times will go too far, and in other places we'll call them our shadow side, right? We talk about that in DISC. What is my shadow side? But this sentence that she used, she said, strengths are when natural talents are used on purpose and with intention. And, it's been a few years since I coached with her, and I'd forgotten that sentence. And it is so powerful. Strengths are when natural talents are used on purpose and with intention. She shared that the reason why they came up, Gallup and Dr. Clifton came up with this assessment was because so many of the assessments we see out there are based on things that we don't want to have. It's like, these are the things you're bad at, don't touch them. Or at least that's where they were before he created this. And he wanted to actually create something that said, these are your strengths. These are the things that you're good at. Let's celebrate those and let's move forward in them. And so being raised in this environment where you've got to actually pull up your grade in that area, or this is an area that you don't do well, you need to work on that. These are the things that I want to work on. And all the years that I was in supervisory management or operations management, I cannot tell you how many people sat down with me to do goals for the year, and they wanted to work on something that is just not one of their strengths. And if it was something that they really needed to actually do in their job, then I would say, yes, let's work on that. Let's figure out a way that makes it simple for you, or you can team up with someone else to make it work, because I'm all about augmenting and mediating and then letting you do that for someone else. Let's play to our strengths. That's what Clifton Strengths is all about. However, they do address this idea of what about weaknesses. And so I got some stuff straight from their site, and I wanted to share it with you because I think that this is the major, objection that a lot of people have to talking about only focusing on strengths. So most people are taught to focus on their weakness to fix them, but instead they should be learning how their strengths can overshadow their weakest areas. And being well-rounded doesn't necessarily mean a higher performance. I work with a life wheel. With my clients, I say, these are 10 areas of your life, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you in these areas? And one of the things that I am very clear about with them is we're not trying to take everything to a 10. We're trying to be reminded why this one is a 10 and why this one is a 2, and figure out a way to get the 2 up to like a 5 with some of the other things. And then the 10, even though it still is something that you love about your life, can be brought back into balance so that it's not out of balance, and then your wheel will turn more smoothly. But it doesn't always lead to higher performance. It just leads to satisfaction, right? So you can achieve the highest level of, you can achieve the highest levels of success only when you stop trying to be a little bit good at everything and instead hone in on what you're naturally best at. In other words, focus on being a little less well-rounded and more on becoming better at what you're really good at. And this, again, is straight from their site. Discovering your strengths is just the start. And Allegra alluded to this. Applying and investing in them sparks real change. When people focus on their strengths, they're 6 times more likely to say and be engaged in whatever they're doing. They're 6 times more likely to perceive that they have an opportunity to do what they do best. And they are 3 times more likely to express the fact that they feel like they have an excellent quality of life. So, the first person we lead is ourselves. We have to turn this around on us and say, how does this show up in my life? How will Clifton Strengths help you? Let me share how Clifton Strengths kind of integrates with and upholds my core values, because the tool that Allegra uses is actually called the UMAP, and it uses a core value or a values assessment, which is a little bit different than core values the way I present them, but they show up together because as long as they're honored, when they are honored and your strengths are you're working your strengths and you're honoring your core values, you'd be surprised. Those are just 2 pieces, but you would be surprised at how much more satisfaction you have and how better you function. So when I talk about my core values and talk about my strengths, I went straight back to my top 5 document that gave me all of the information and some of the notes that I had made. And this is where it showed up the biggest for me was in connectedness. I said, my values are not undermined. When a job, project, conversation, or relationship does undermine them, I am extremely uncomfortable. I'm still learning how to graciously extricate myself from those situations or relationships while still valuing the person, because that's what's important to me. But helping others overcome obstacles literally lights my fire. That's how I see core values showing up. So let me talk about my top 3 core values. Freedom, in this one, is just what I shared a little bit about. There was connectedness. I am spiritually minded. And that shows up for me in my Christian beliefs and my faith. But I do believe everything is connected. So it doesn't bother me to look at other faith systems and say, well, what can I get from that helps me understand myself better or how other people function better? But I believe everything is connected and has a purpose. And for me, again, that shows up in my Christian faith. But I love coaching and philosophical conversations with like-minded individuals. And by like-minded, I mean curious, investigative, willing to step outside of those objective facts. I don't mind the facts. They're a good scaffolding, shall we say. But a lot of times, if we look at all the implications and possibilities around them, we're going to see those facts in a different light. So that's how freedom shows up in my Clifton Strengths, is in connectedness. For authenticity, which is my second top core value, it's my activator. If you listen to the last podcast episode, we joked about the fact that I am totally authentic. I share my own stories. And for me, it's really important to be true, genuine, sincere, and original, and to have some kind of a reliable and documentable provenance for what I present or I have to offer. Just like a really good painting needs to have a really good provenance to say, yep, this one was actually painted by Vincent van Gogh or Michelangelo or Da Vinci or whatever. I want to be able to say these experiences that I have, there's only one place for the provenance to be, and that's in my experience. Even if I share with an information piece from or an example from a client relationship without divulging client information, I can share those experiences knowing they are true and sincere and original. But I'm also very open with my own struggles and accomplishments. This gives you the opportunity to see those possibilities in yourself. And I just revel in the idea of helping others see the possibilities for the future. I love rallying a team up to set them off on something and get it done. I try this with my son, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Part of that's because he's 15. But this is where authenticity shows up in my activator strength. And my belonging core value shows up in my relator strength. As others place their trust in my abilities to help them figure things out, they're inviting me into their circle. Then we each belong in those moments. And I have clients who come back to me, this happened just yesterday, months after we have quote unquote finished working together, because I tell them we're never done, right? You can always contact me. And they tell me how yet another thing that we worked on has affected their growth. That is a real sense of belonging for me. It's not a belonging to a big group. It's a belonging that that person has with me and I have with them. So this is how my core values and my strengths actually overlap. Now, how about my awareness, my levels of awareness, the ABCs? You've heard me say this before. It goes all the way to 11. I love my good Spinal Tap reference. This is my maximizer showing up. Maximizers are people who are especially talented in taking the strengths as a way to stimulate personal and group excellence. We seek to transform something strong into something superb. And I love to joke around that whatever you've got, your idea, your business, your strength, your talent, I am going to help you dial that all the way up past 10. And I love doing that. But I want to take just in my awareness, ABCs, and just look at the maximizer, because I think this one was the hardest one for me to understand. And even today, or even right now in this moment, and having talked with Allegra recently, I see it even a little bit differently than I had. She reminded me that Maximizer is in the influencer group. There are 4 main groups. And actually, let me share with you what those are. There are 4 main, what they call them, domains. There's the executing domain that has to do with my activator, getting things done. The influencing domain, which is, I think, connectedness. No, for sure it's Maximizer. And there's a bunch of others in there. I don't even remember all the 34. There's the relationship building domain, Connectedness and Relator. It falls under that for me. And then there's the strategic thinking domain. So executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And for me, strategic falls into that one. So I have something from all the 4 main domains of the Clifton Strengthsfinder, but Maximizer was one that I didn't fully understand. And part of it, I think it was back to and I'll talk about this in a second, my conditioning. As a woman, I'm not supposed to be that influencer, right? So as far as my assumptions are concerned, my weaknesses, I was assuming my weaknesses were something that I must work on. And my maximizer says, no, you don't. Sure, you need to make sure they're covered, and you need to make sure that you're not dropping the ball, and you need to make sure that you're not breaking laws or rules, but you don't have to work on them. You can work on your strengths. You can maximize those strengths for yourself and for others. As far as beliefs are concerned in this area, I shared how Maximizer shows up in my work with others, which was a good reminder that it's an influencer strength, but it doesn't show up as much how I think about myself. And so what I've done in the past is kind of challenge myself to turn that mirror back on me and look inward at the beliefs that maybe hold me back and say, Andrea, you have strengths. How can you maximize those strengths? How can you take what's good and make it great? And then when I look at my conditioning, I alluded to this, my instincts know what's a good project. My instincts know what's really good. I can actually see this. Whether or not it's something you want to do or not is not the point. I can actually see what's really good. But my conditioning tells me I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be telling them what to do. I shouldn't be. This is a constant battle. So these things do show up in my ABCs and my awareness, and being even more aware of this lovely strength of being a maximizer, I think is going to help me out in a lot of areas. Now, what has the Clifton Strengthsfinder allowed me to stand tall and own? Well, for starters, it's this whole strategic piece. I truly can identify opportunities that others overlook. When I point things out to people, Like, I've shared this example a lot recently. If you have a room that has 4 walls and 4 windows and 4 people, or maybe you're just looking through one window, you can see what's on the other side of the room. You can even see maybe what's to the sides of you, but you cannot see what's underneath your own window. But if you are standing on the other side of the room looking through that window, you can see what's under my window. And so either we can move around from window to window, or we can listen to other people. And when I work with someone in a strategic way and my strength of strategic thinking shows up, I actually point things out to people and they go, oh, I never thought of that. That's brilliant. Whereas for me, it's just right out there laying on the floor. It's just right out in the open. And so being able to recognize that I'm really good at pointing out patterns in behavior or logic, and being able to see when there's not logic or behaviors that are incongruent. And even just a conversation with my husband, recently, I was like, well, what is it that upsets you about that? How is that your issue to be upset about? And he was like, oh, you're right. That doesn't make any sense. And he was able to just let go. This is super helpful in my work. When I lean into this strength and allow myself the freedom and curiosity to just kind of step back and look, it really, really helps my clients. 3 episodes ago, when I talked about the disc and the power disc with the 7 different leadership characteristics, I told you at that moment, I said, these are going to show up in all the other assessments. Well, this is a really good example. Strategic, believe it or not, is almost kind of sister to the wonder that I have in the working genius. So when I'm able to see all these different ideas and come up with all these different ideas and see all the different possibilities, that's wonder playing out, but it's also being able to use them in a strategic way. The second place that I think the Strengthsfinder has allowed me to stand tall and own it is in that relator strength. This is intuition. It's my ability to know things. Friends, professors, research assistants, subordinates, or even my boss used to come and ask me for guidance or insight. They would ask for recommendations many times on things I had no experience in, like totally no clue what they were talking about, but they trusted me because of my relator ability. And it spooked me because, like I said a minute ago, I want to know that I have the experience to talk to something and speak to something well. But while it spooks me, it still honors me. It's like I'm really honored that people would come to me and just allow my intuition to help them. And it gives me the ability to help them find answers, to ask them the right questions. But even if I don't have all that experience that I or maybe some other people might think I need, my gut is rarely wrong. And I might feel something in my gut and start thinking about it for a week or 2 or 6 months. But usually it's right. And this shows up in my working genius discernment or in my power disc relating. This actually gives me the ability to connect with people and understand what's going on and help people parse all of that out. And the third one that I'd like to kind of highlight as far as standing tall and own it is this idea of connectedness. I have a friend who says, Andrea, you're a theologian at heart, and I might be, and I think, yes, that's great. But I have another friend who says, no, you're a philosopher at heart. And I'm like, you know what? I think that may be more accurate for me because I even love like philosophy of theology and philosophy of religion. I have loved owning the big thinker aspects of my personality and this talent for going either really deep or really high level on certain things. I was privileged to travel with my mentor, earlier in the year and work with a client that it was all lawyers. And we were just sitting around the table with all these lawyers in the room. And I remember thinking, this is so stimulating. I don't have any idea what they're talking about, but I can participate in the conversation because I totally can connect with and see how these things relate to these things over here. And being able to do that has just been a real gift to be able to accept that about myself and to say, this is a superpower that I have. This is something that I am really good at. So I just invite you today to say, is Strengthsfinder for you? Allegra talked last week about how assessments are not for everybody and they may not be for you, and that's okay. But the Strengthsfinder is, you can't do a free one, but you get your top 5 for just $25. And I just had another conversation today with someone that I'm going to be interviewing with, and he's a Clifton Strengthsfinder coach. And both he and Allegra were telling me they've redone the whole presentation and report that they give you. And it seems like it's just really, really helpful. But it's just another tool that works hand in hand with DISC, core values, working genius. It all helps us see how we function in the world, how we fit into teams, how your team works together. It's really nice to remember that we're talented in certain areas, right? Remember, strengths show up and they are present, and we call something a strength when a natural talent is used on purpose and with intention. So how are you going to use your natural talents? Maybe it's a natural talent for ideation. Maybe it's a natural talent for relating. Maybe it's a natural talent for, there's one that's called competitive. And in my book, that's like at the bottom. Like in my 34, that's way towards the bottom of the list. But some people have that at the top. How are you going to use that as your strategic superpower? If you've already started using StrengthsFinder, I'm game. Tell me what your top 5 are. How are you going to stand tall and own it? If you're interested in working with Allegra, she's got openings. She's a one-on-one coach, and she can actually help you put this together in different ways. But you could probably just do a $25 StrengthsFinder and get a lot of information. Either way, I'm dying to know how this is helpful to you. Please contact me on social media. DM me through LinkedIn or Instagram. I will reply. You can hit comment or reply on the post that advertises this particular episode. You can email me at Andrea@theintentionaloptimist. Or if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe and share or comment below. Let other people know that these are helpful things that will give them the information they need. Because here's the deal, y'all. We go farther when we go together. So when we have this kind of information, whether or not you use all of these tools or just one of them or none of them because you're comfortable where you are, either way, when we do this together, more of us can stand tall and own it. So let's do this together. Until next time.